All right, folks, let's dive on in. We're going to be talking about the top 5 best psychological safety exercises. And when you get your team and other people to practice these exercises, people are going to feel so much more comfortable to open up, to share, instead of holding back and being quiet all the time because they're worried about what might happen. And a great example of this was with an organization I was working with, a nonprofit, and their leadership team was growing, the organization was growing, but they didn't get to really talk about how to work with one another. And there was a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of conflict. And so we used several of these different exercises to help the team become more collaborative and really work together. And one of the things that they talked about that was a really cool outcome is that sometimes when people came up to leadership, there wasn't a lot of clarity of what the person was really talking about or what they really wanted. It was them just kind of going and dumping. So now they gave each other permission to say, hold on, what the heck are you trying to say? And they said that they got to do that quite a bit after the workshop, and they would always have a laugh about it because the other person would be like, oh, right, okay, boom, and then get clear on what they were able to say. But it's because they did these different exercises to help them feel more safe and comfortable to be open with one another. And so I want to share these 5 different psychological safety exercises that you and your team can use to start feeling more open in the space. And the first one, which is exactly what this organization did, was ask clarifying questions. People are going to come at you with a lot of things, and it's so easy to come as someone who kind of knows it all and is able to just give you answers right away. But a lot of times what can happen is there's miscommunication happening. People leave and they're like, oh, I still don't really know what I actually needed, and I definitely didn't get what I needed. Or there's a lot of just general misunderstanding. So a great way to mitigate all this is to be patient and just ask clarifying questions to really get to the root of what it is that someone's talking about, rather than pretending that we know, creating answers, but it's not really the actual problem, and it might not even be at all what this person needed. So asking those clarifying questions. Now, a great way to, what you can pair that with when asking clarifying questions is this second exercise here, which is reflecting back what someone said. Don't parrot. At least I don't recommend parroting. Parroting is just using the exact words someone said back at them. So it means you heard them, but it doesn't necessarily mean you understand them. If you do a reflection, which is you kind of digesting what they said and being able to give it back to them with different words, it shows that you're really working to understand them. And if you're able to really reflect back what someone said, it can really help people feel a lot more safe and comfortable because I know that you're working hard to try to really understand what it is that I'm saying rather than judging or trying to rush through the process. And a really cool moment, which I get to do quite a bit in this work, is if you're able to reflect back what someone said in a much more clear, concise way than they were able to actually articulate in the first place. So that also shows that you clearly have a deep understanding of what they're talking about, and it helps them get more clarity on what it is that they're trying to say and what they're trying to figure out. And so that's a really great tool. Those two combined is a really great dynamite duo when it comes to building the psychological safety in the space. Now, if you're working with a big old team and you got a whole bunch of people and you're trying to, let's say, brainstorm or identify what's the root issue here or what's going on, a lot of times what people do, they'll just have a meeting and say, all right, folks, what do you think? And the two loud voices, extroverts, similar to myself, will be the ones to jump on in and get in there And then, but that's the only conversation that's really happening in the space. And then at the end of the meeting, a whole bunch of people didn't get heard. They probably didn't feel comfortable to share. And now you're only, as a team, working on a small fraction of what the whole issue or challenge really is. So a great tool to use is kind of this 3-step process, especially if you're working with a bigger team, is one, to self-reflect. So whatever challenge that, say, you want to bring up, hey folks, we're looking to launch this new product or service, but we're having some challenges with getting some of the technology. What are the issues going on? Give people some time to reflect. Give them time and space to really get to process what's going on. In other videos, I've talked about how our brain has different levels of processing. One, which is the very quick, very fast, straight to the point type processing, but it's not often the most accurate. And then there's the other type of mental processing where we slow down and we really put in time and energy to figure out what's going on. Now, that's a lot more tiresome and that takes more time, but that's often the much more effective process. So, give people 5 minutes to kind of self-reflect on what is it that we're really talking about here. Then after that, have them meet, get them in small groups, tiny groups, and have them get to share what they wrote with one another and start opening up the conversation that way. That helps people kind of ease into the process of speaking up, and then you can then open it up to the big group, and now we can have a much more engaged, much more collaborative, much more dynamic conversation, and people feel really safe because they were able to get their thoughts in order. They were then able to talk to a couple people, which isn't a huge amount of risks, and get some validation and hearing different perspectives and get a fuller understanding. Now they feel much more comfortable opening up in the big space because they have the confidence in it, and now they have that safety factor in knowing, okay, I have a well-informed opinion, my thoughts are absolutely valid, now I can really bring it up in this space. So that's a great way, if you're working with a lot of people, to help them feel safe in the space to open up and share. Now, another thing that you can do if you want to create more psychological safety in the space, another exercise, and this is really speaking to those people who are in a position of power, executives, C-suite, directors, managers, whoever has, whoever's the person in power with whatever group that you're working with, be vulnerable first. Show, don't tell, how this is an okay space to share your mistakes, your concerns, your worries. And the real way to get people to feel safe is if you lead by example. If you're the one who's in the position of power to share vulnerably about worries that you have, mistakes that you've made, the things that you don't know, and let them see that, and let them see like, oh, no one's yelling at each other, no one's belittling each other, no one's judging one another for it. Okay, so that means I could do that too. So that's a really great exercise, the practice of vulnerability, especially for those in power, to help other people feel more comfortable to open up about their concerns and whatever issues that they may have. Now, the fifth exercise here of the psychologically safe exercise that you could practice with your team is making sure that all voices are heard. It's something that it sounds really simple, but it's something to be really intentional in the practice when you're working with your team and when you're working with your group. And giving everyone a voice to be heard. Now, that doesn't mean that we do everything that everyone says. It just means that people know that they're included in the space, that their voice is valuable. And when you work with them to help them feel included by making sure their voice is heard in the space, people feel more comfortable to share their voice. And so really making sure that you do everything you can saying, hey, I want to hear what everyone says. And again, hearing everyone doesn't mean that everyone actually has to talk. You can have them write down their thoughts on post-its and put them up on the wall, and now you're visualizing the conversation and all voices are included. So there are different ways that you can make sure that all voices are heard, but making sure that that is something that you're being really purposeful in the experience, rather than allowing the 2 or 3 extrovert big mouths like myself to take up the space and then just moving on. So that's an exercise that you can practice of making sure every person has a voice in this. Now, I want to give a little bonus exercise here, and really to help create a really nice exercise to create safety in this space is working to separate the person from the problem. So if your team is there and there's a lot of issues about whatever there might be, whether it's a new service, a process that you and your team work on, and you see that it's not working very well, what you can do is separate the person from the problem. And the way that you can do that, again, going back to what I said, is using sticky notes or a survey or whatever it is, so that their thoughts and their information is put into a space where the person is no longer attached to it, and then we can just look at the comments. I worked with a nonprofit and they were having problems with a lot of decision making, and then particularly around the agenda of the topics of what we want to talk about regarding what decisions are made. So before the meeting, everyone put into an anonymous survey the different agenda items that they want to talk about, because they were worried about, oh, because of my position and I'm kind of a small fry compared to the other executives in there, I don't really feel like I have a say. And a lot of people felt that way. So what they did was, in a survey, just put in all the agenda items, and then when the meeting came up, they were able to look at all the agenda items and then identify as a teams which ones do we really want to focus on. So it wasn't connected to the person. People felt free to share what they felt like should be talked about, particularly when making decisions. And the group was able to focus on the challenge, the problem, the issue, and not have to worry about the person. So working to separate the person from the problem allows people to feel comfortable to be honest about what it is that they see, feel, hear, and so on and so on. And so those are several different psychological safe exercises that you can practice with your team to help create a more open, collaborative, safe, engaging, happy team culture. And if you want to dive deeper into this, we have a really cool free resource for you. It's in the link below, so go ahead and click there, and it's a free guide on how to get people to open up more in meetings. And this will show you this along with the other things that you can do to have a space where people are open, they're collaborative, you're productive, and people are happier working with one another. And I want to say thank you so much for taking the time to go through this video. I hope it was really helpful for you. Thank you so much, and have a great day.